What?
It's one of the most common, most relatable things we do, right? But it's also, weirdly, one of the most mysterious. I'm talking about the yawn. It's a reflex that's so powerful, so ancient, that we share it with all sorts of creatures, from our cats to chimpanzees. But why do we actually do it? Well, the answer is way more surprising than you
In
probably
fact,
think.
just me talking about yawning, or you reading this very sentence, might be enough to make one happen. Go on. Did it work? That strange, contagious quality? That's actually one of the biggest clues in this whole mystery. You've got to remember, this is an involuntary reflex that stretches way across the animal kingdom. We're talking mammals, birds, maybe even some fish. So this isn't just some quirky human thing. It's a deep, fundamental biological behavior. The real question is, what's it for? Okay, so to figure out what yawning is, we first have to get really clear on what it isn't. And that means we need to tackle the biggest misconception out there. The old theory seemed so simple. We yawn when our brain is low on oxygen. Makes sense, right? You take a big gulp of air, and that should fix it. But here's the thing. Scientists tested this way back in 1987. They had people breathe air with tons of carbon dioxide or even pure oxygen. And you know what they found? It made absolutely no difference to how often they yawned. The takeaway was crystal clear. Whatever a yawn is for, it has nothing to do with oxygen. So that just blows the old theory out of the water, and it leaves us with this big, fascinating question. If this deep, powerful reflex isn't for breathing, what in the world is its purpose? Well, it turns out the answer has two really cool parts. Let's start with the physical side of things. The leading theory today suggests that a yawn is basically your brain's own personal air conditioning unit. This is called the thermoregulatory theory, and a researcher named Andrew Gallup has done some amazing work on it. The core idea is pretty simple. Your brain starts to get a little too warm, and that heat triggers a yawn. The yawn itself is the physical process that cools your brain back down so it can keep working at its best. So how does this whole cooling thing actually work? It's a brilliant little three-step process. First, that huge stretch in your jaw, it's not just for show. It dramatically increases blood flow to your head, kind of like a radiator, pushing warmer blood out and pulling cooler blood in. At the exact same time, that deep breath you take sucks cool outside air into your nose and mouth, which directly chills the blood vessels right there. And for the final touch, the yawn actually flexes the walls of your sinuses, almost like a bellows, helping to ventilate them and adding one last cooling effect. It's a perfectly coordinated bit of biological engineering. And the proof for this is incredibly direct. In studies where scientists could actually measure the brain temperature of rats in real time, they saw this undeniable pattern. The temperature would consistently rise in the moments before a yawn and then drop right after. This showed a direct causal link. A warming brain triggers the cooling reflex of a yawn. Okay, brain cooling makes a ton of sense for why I might yawn when I'm tired or bored. But it doesn't explain that other bizarre feature, does it? Why is it so contagious? I mean, my brain temperature has nothing to do with someone else's, right? This is where we get to the second part of the story, and it's all about our social wiring and how we're connected to the people around us.
And this is where things get really fascinating. In one study, researchers measured how empathetic people were and then showed them videos of other people yawning. The results are just stark. On the left, you can see the empathy scores for people who didn't catch the yawn. Now look at the right. Those are the scores for the people who did. You see that? The entire curve for the contagious yawners is shifted over, centered on a much higher empathy value.
The researchers who did the study put it perfectly. The people who caught a yawn weren't just a little more empathetic. On average, they scored a full half a standard deviation higher on the tests. That is a significant, measurable connection between the simple reflex and our capacity for empathy. But, and this is a really crucial little detail, while contagious yawning is linked to the feeling of empathy, the study found it didn't really predict whether someone would do something helpful, like donating money. This suggests the connection is more about sharing an emotional state than it is a direct trigger to go out and help someone. This empathy connection might actually point to something even deeper. something from our evolutionary past, group vigilance. Think about our ancestors living in a group. If one person yawns, it's an honest signal that their alertness is dipping. So when others see it, they contagiously yawn too. But it's not just mimicry. The theory is that their own yawn acts like a reset button, reflexively boosting their awareness to make up for their tired friend. It's this incredible subconscious way for a group to keep its collective guard up. And they actually tested this. After having people watch videos of yawning, they timed how fast they could spot different images. The result was amazing. The people who saw a yawn were significantly faster at spotting threatening things, like snakes, but showed no speed boost at all for non-threatening things, like frogs. It's almost like a contagious yawn is literally our brain's ancient alarm system whispering, "Hey, pay attention. Danger could be nearby."
So we've got brain cooling and social signaling. But it turns out understanding this seemingly simple reflex has some very real and very important applications for our own health. Because it's so deeply tied to our body's core functions, paying attention to yawning patterns, especially if you're yawning excessively, can be a really valuable diagnostic tool. It can be a symptom that something else is going on just beneath the surface.
Because a yawn is a sign of thermoregulation. If you see excessive yawning, it can mean the body is really struggling. It's been linked to some pretty serious conditions, things like sleep disorders, sleep apnea, neurological issues like MS and epilepsy, and even serious events like a stroke. In those cases, the constant yawning is like a distress signal, a sign that the body's fundamental temperature control might be failing. So what seems like this simple, maybe even boring behavior is actually this amazing window into how our body works. It's a cooling system for our brain, a social signal tied to empathy and group survival, and a potential red flag for our neurological health. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If we've gotten the story of yawning so wrong for so long, what other simple, everyday behaviors are hiding these deep scientific explanations, just waiting for us to figure them out? It's a great reminder to stay curious.